I was folding laundry on a quiet Tuesday morning when I heard a knock at the door. Nothing unusual. Delivery men, neighbors, even church volunteers stopped by from time to time. But for some reason, that particular knock made me pause. It wasn't loud or rushed. Just steady, patient, like whoever was outside wasn't in a hurry to leave. I wiped my hands on a towel and went to the door. When I opened it, I saw a girl maybe 16, maybe 17 standing there with a backpack that looked too heavy for her small shoulders. She wasn't dressed poorly, but something about her appearance told me she hadn't slept well. Her hair was tied back loosely, her eyes a little puffy. And there was a nervousness to the way she held herself. "Are you Linda Carter?" she asked, voice soft but clear. I nodded. "Yes, can I help you?" She let out a slow breath as if she'd been holding it for a long time. Then she reached into her backpack and pulled out a small wooden box. Old, scratched, something that had seen years of being carried around without care. "This belongs to you," she said, holding it out. "My dad told me to bring it back if things ever got bad." I didn't take the box right away. It felt like the air around me changed the moment she said those words. Not because of the box, but because of what she said next. "My dad is Michael," she added quietly. "Michael Carter." My chest tightened. That name hadn't left my mind for a single day in 5 years. Yet hearing it out loud felt like someone had opened a door I'd locked shut. And then she said it. "I'm his daughter. Your granddaughter." I remember gripping the door frame because my body suddenly felt too light and too heavy at the same time. I had imagined a lot of scenarios over the years: reconciliation, anger, forgiveness, but never this. Never a granddaughter standing at my door alone, holding something that once belonged to me. "Come inside," I said gently. Stepping aside so she could enter, she walked in slowly, like someone entering a stranger's home for the first time, unsure if they were welcome. I led her to the kitchen table and poured her a glass of water. She held it carefully but didn't drink. Her fingers kept tapping lightly on the rim, a small sign of nervousness she probably didn't even notice. "What's your name?" I asked. "Emily," she said. "I'm sorry for coming without calling, but I didn't know where else to go." There was no anger in her voice, only exhaustion. "What happened?" I asked, keeping my tone calm so she wouldn't feel pressured. She stared at the table for a few seconds before answering. "My dad left," she said. "We were staying at a motel outside of Colorado Springs. He went out to get food 3 nights ago and he never came back." My heart dropped. Michael had made mistakes, yes, but abandoning his daughter? I didn't want to believe that. But the look in her eyes wasn't confusion, it was acceptance. A painful acceptance she had no choice but to carry. "Were you alone all that time?" I asked. She nodded. "I kept thinking he'd come back. I stayed awake the first night, then the second. By the third, I didn't know what else to do. I checked his bag. That's when I found the box and the note with your address on it." "My address?" I repeated, surprised. She reached into her backpack again and pulled out a torn piece of paper. My address was written in Michael's handwriting. A handwriting I hadn't seen in years. "I thought he didn't want anything to do with me," I whispered. Emily looked up carefully. "He never said he hated you, he said things were complicated." A small ache settled in my chest. Complicated. That was an easier word than the truth. My son walked out thinking I had betrayed him something. I never did. And the one object inside that wooden box was the reason he turned his back on me. Emily placed it gently between us. "He said this is yours," she said. "And that he shouldn't have taken it. I don't know what it is, but he told me if anything ever happened, I should bring it to you." I finally picked up the box. My hands shook a little as I opened it, even though I tried to hide it. Inside, wrapped in the same old piece of velvet I remembered, was something I never expected to see again. A symbol of my trust. Something that was stolen from me the day everything fell apart between me and my son. Emily noticed the shift in my expression. "Do you know what it is?" she asked. "Yes," I said quietly. "I know exactly what it is." She hesitated, then asked, Did it have something to do with why my dad left you?" I closed the box slowly and set it down. "Emily," I said, "your father and I had a misunderstanding. A very painful one. He believed something about me that wasn't true." "What was it?" she asked, genuinely wanting to understand. "That I betrayed him," I said, feeling the weight of the words all over again. "That I kept something from him. Something he believed he deserved to know." Emily's eyes softened, almost like she could feel the hurt in my voice. "And you didn't?" she asked softly. "No," I said. "I didn't." But by the time I tried to explain, he had already made up his mind. Emily leaned back, processing everything slowly. For a girl her age, she carried herself with surprising maturity. But I could also see the fear of being abandoned, fear of not belonging anywhere, fear of being rejected. "Here too, you're safe here," I told her gently. "Whatever happened, whoever left you behind, you're not alone anymore." She finally took a sip of her water. her shoulders relaxing just a little. "Thank you," she whispered. For the first time since she arrived, her voice sounded like a child who finally found a place to exhale. She looked at the wooden box again. "Will you tell me the story? About what happened between you and my dad?" I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said. "If you want to hear it, I'll tell you everything." And in that moment, sitting across from the granddaughter I never knew I had, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a chance to finally heal a wound that had been left open far too long. Emily didn't rush me. She sat quietly, her fingers tracing the edge of the wooden box like she was afraid of it but also drawn to it. I could tell she wanted answers, yet she was careful, not demanding, not pushing. That alone told me she was nothing like her father at that age. I took a slow breath and leaned back in my chair. "Before I tell you what led to all this," I began, "I need to know something first. Emily, when was the last time you saw your dad acting normal, like himself?" She studied the ceiling for a moment, trying to remember. "He wasn't really normal for a long time," she said gently. "He switched jobs often. He got angry fast. Not at me, just at life, at everything. He always felt like the world was against him." That stung a bit. Michael used to be such a bright child, energetic, curious, hopeful. He used to believe the world owed him something good. But somewhere along the way, after he became an adult, that shifted into believing the world owed him everything. "Did he ever talk about me?" I asked. Emily nodded. "Sometimes. Mostly when he was tired or frustrated. He'd say things like, 'Mom never understood me,' or 'Mom hurt me more than anyone ever did.' But then other times he'd say you were the only person who ever cared about him." That was Michael, hot and cold. Resentful one minute, sentimental the next. I rubbed my forehead. "Your father never told you why he left, did he?" "No," she said softly. "He just said you betrayed him. But he never explained how." I opened the wooden box again, letting the piece of velvet fall back to reveal the object inside. Emily leaned closer. Her expression didn't show recognition, only curiosity. "Is that a necklace?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, it's a medical alert tag. The only thing your father's biological father left behind." Emily blinked. "He wasn't your husband?" "No," I said. "Michael's father left before Michael was even born. He never came back. This tag was the only proof Michael had of who he was. I kept it safe because I didn't want him to grow up attached to the idea of a man who didn't want to be part of his life." Emily frowned slightly. "So why did he think you betrayed him?" I folded the velvet back over the tag before answering. "Because he convinced himself that there was some deep, dark secret behind his father's identity. He believed I hid something from him, some truth he thought would change his life. But there was nothing. His father wasn't a hero. He didn't die tragically. He didn't go missing. He simply chose not to stay." Emily listened closely, absorbing every word. "When Michael turned 23, I continued, he found this tag in my drawer. Instead of asking me about it, he assumed the worst. He thought I had kept it from him because I didn't want him to find his father. That I lied to him his whole life." Emily's brows pulled together. "But you didn't know," I said quietly. "But once someone decides to believe the worst, it doesn't matter what the truth is." She looked down at the box. "So he took it from you?" "Yes, and in the heat of the moment during the fight we both said things we shouldn't have. He walked out and never came back." Emily's voice lowered. "Did you try contacting him after?" "For months," I admitted. "But he wouldn't answer my calls, wouldn't reply to my messages, wouldn't even open the door when I drove out to see him. Eventually, I had to let go." Emily fell silent, her eyes moving between me and the box. After a moment, she said, "He always acted like something was missing in his life. Like he was angry at something he couldn't explain, because he was chasing a ghost." I said softly. "He wanted a father figure he never had. And instead of accepting the truth that the man didn't want a family, he blamed the one person who stayed." Emily slowly reached out and touched the box, almost as if giving it respect. "I don't understand why he would leave me, though," she said. "Even if he had issues, why leave me alone like that? Without money, without food, without anything?" Her voice cracked at the end, and that broke something inside me. I got up and moved my chair closer to hers. "Emily," I said gently, "your father was struggling. Maybe with more than we realized, emotionally, financially, mentally. People who feel lost sometimes make choices that hurt the ones they love. But that doesn't mean you deserved it. And it doesn't mean you're not worthy of being cared for." She tried to blink away her tears, but one slid down her cheek. I handed her a tissue and she wiped it quickly, embarrassed. "I didn't mean to cry," she murmured. "You're allowed to," I said softly. "You've carried too much for someone your age." She exhaled, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was scared he wouldn't come back." Every noise outside the motel made me jump. My heart tightened. A teenager, alone for days, waiting for a father who had abandoned her. Do you want to stay here for a while? I asked gently. You don't have to figure everything out right now. She looked surprised. You'd let me? Your family, I said. The door is open. You can stay as long as you need. Emily didn't speak at first. Then she nodded slowly, like she was giving herself permission to accept kindness for the first time. Thank you. She whispered. I didn't think anyone would want me. I want you, I said firmly. And I'm not going anywhere. A quiet, shaky smile appeared on her face, small but real. She glanced at the box again. So what happens now? She asked. I looked at her and felt something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose. Now, I said, we figure out what your father was running from. And what brought you to me? Emily nodded, her eyes steady. No longer just frightened, now curious. And just like that, a new chapter in both our lives began. After Emily agreed to stay, I prepared the guest room for her, the same room Michael used when he was a teenager. The moment I opened the door, a strange wave of nostalgia washed over me. The room still smelled faintly of old books and the citrus air freshener he used to spray after baseball practices. I hadn't changed much over the years. Part of me always hoped he'd show up one day needing a place to rest. Emily stood in the doorway behind me, gripping her backpack straps tightly. You don't have to give me a whole room, she said, almost apologetically. I can sleep on the couch. You're not a guest, I said gently. You're family. You get a bed. Her shoulders relaxed just a little. She walked in slowly, looking around the room like every object inside carried some secret story she might uncover. Was this his room? She asked. Yes, I said. Every poster on the wall, every trophy, every book on that shelf, those were all his. She walked toward the bookshelf, touching the spine of a worn paperback. He used to tell me he liked science fiction, she murmured. He loved it, I smiled. Used to pretend he'd grow up to be an astronaut. He even taped glow-in-the-dark stars to the ceiling. Emily tilted her head back. They're still there, I looked up. Sure enough, the faded stars were still stuck in place, even though their glow died years ago. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We both stood there, two people connected by one person who had shaped our lives. In very different ways. You can rest for a bit, I told her. I'll make us something to eat, she nodded, setting her backpack down on the bed like she finally trusted she could set it somewhere without needing to grab it again in a hurry. In the kitchen, I started preparing a simple meal, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Comfort food. Something warm, something familiar. Something that made people feel safe. When Emily finally came downstairs, her hair brushed, her face washed, she looked younger, less tense, less guarded. I didn't realize how tired I was, she said, sitting at the table. You've been through a lot, I replied. Your body is catching up. We ate quietly for a few minutes. I didn't want to overwhelm her with questions, but I could tell something was sitting on her mind. She kept glancing at the wooden box that I had placed on the counter. Can I ask something? She finally said. Of course. When my dad took that tag from you, why didn't you go after him? I mean, you're his mom. He could have at least listened, I sighed, resting my spoon against the bowl. I tried, I said. Many times. But when someone convinces themselves they've been wronged, everything you say sounds like an excuse to them. Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, did he ever apologize? No, I answered honestly. He never gave himself the chance to hear my side. He chose distance instead. She pushed her soup around gently with her spoon. I don't know why he kept the tag with him all these years, she murmured. If he thought it hurt him so much, maybe it reminded him of the questions he never answered. I said, or maybe he kept it because part of him knew he took it without understanding the truth. Emily took a slow breath. Then her next words surprised me. He wasn't always like this, she said. When I was younger, he was different. Not perfect, but he tried. He used to make breakfast on Sundays. He'd take me to thrift stores and let me pick out a book. He used to laugh more. It wasn't all bad. I'm glad you had those moments, I said softly. She nodded. But as I got older, it got harder. He'd get frustrated easily. Sometimes he wouldn't talk for hours. Sometimes he'd drink a little too much. He'd always tell me he was trying, but life kept beating him down. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't defending him either. It was honest, something she had probably held inside for a long time. Did he ever talk about his past? I asked. Only in pieces, she said. He didn't like talking about his childhood. Just said it was complicated and that he didn't want to remember it. I pressed my lips together. That was partly my fault, I admitted. I tried too hard to protect him from the truth. I thought shielding him would make him feel loved instead. He felt like something was missing. Emily looked at me carefully. What truth? I hesitated, choosing my words with care. I didn't tell him the whole story about his father. Not because I wanted to hide it from him, but because some truths aren't worth reopening old wounds. But he needed answers, she said gently. Yes, I agreed. and maybe I should have shared more than I did. Emily leaned back slowly. Do you think he's okay? Wherever he is now? I didn't know how to answer that. A mother's heart always wants to say yes. Reality doesn't always agree. I think he's lost, I said honestly. But I don't think he's beyond coming back. People go through darkness. Sometimes they just need someone who hasn't given up on them. Emily gave a small, sad smile. You haven't given up, have you? No, I said. I never will. He's my son. Her eyes softened, and for the first time since she stepped into my home, she looked like she trusted me. After a moment, she said, I want to know everything. Not just about the tag. About him. About you. About what happened. I want to understand the whole story, and I'll tell you, I said. But it'll take time. I have time, she whispered. There was something brave about the way she said it, quiet but determined. Like she was ready to face truths she'd never been allowed to hear before. Later that night, after Emily went upstairs to rest, I stayed in the kitchen with the wooden box. I opened it again, holding the tag between my fingers. It felt heavier than I remembered, like it carried not just the past, but the weight of everything that followed. I whispered to myself, Michael, why now? Why send her back with this? But of course, there was no answer, not yet. What I didn't know, what I couldn't possibly imagine, was that Emily's rival was only the beginning. The tag wasn't the only thing Michael left behind, and very soon, I was going to discover exactly what he had been running from. When morning finally came, I felt exhausted in a way that sleep can't fix. My eyes burned, my body was heavy, but my mind was sharper than it had been in months. Last night had changed something inside me. A switch had flipped. I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I went to the kitchen early, thinking maybe a quiet start would help me breathe. But the moment I stepped inside, I froze. My daughter-in-law, Ima, was already there, leaning against the counter with her phone, typing something with a slight smirk on her face. She didn't even look up. It was the same old thing, her presence filling the room like she owned everything. But today I didn't rush to step aside. I stood straight, walked in, and started making tea like it was my kitchen. She noticed. Her eyes lifted slowly, scanning me from head to toe. You're up early, she said. Her voice intentionally casual, as if she expected me to explain myself. I didn't. I always wake early, I replied softly, pouring water into the kettle. She raised an eyebrow, surprised at my tone. Usually, she was the one who spoke with confidence, and I kept my answers short to avoid arguments. But today something felt different. The house didn't feel entirely hers anymore. Not after everything last night had revealed to me. She tilted her head. Your son said you were feeling sick. You should rest. I'll handle everything. There it was again, that sweet voice she always used in front of him. But the moment he wasn't around, it turned sharp. I'm fine, I said. And I can handle myself. She didn't like that. I saw the change in her expression, the tightening jaw, the flicker of irritation she tried to hide. What's the mood today? She muttered under her breath, but loud enough for me to hear. Instead of reacting, I poured tea into my cup and sat at the small table by the window. The morning sunlight hit the floor, making the kitchen look peaceful despite the tension. When she realized I wasn't engaging, she came closer. Is something wrong? She asked, pretending to be polite. I looked up at her, calm, steady. A lot has been wrong, I answered. You just didn't notice. Or maybe you did. That was the first time I had spoken to her without fear, without hesitation. The truth slipped out naturally, like it had been waiting. Her face stiffened. What do you mean by that? I didn't reply immediately. I took a sip of tea, giving myself a moment. You know exactly what I mean, I said. For the first time since she came into our home, she looked unsettled. Not scared, not guilty, just unsure. Like she couldn't predict my next step. And that uncertainty bothered her. She folded her arms. If you have something to say, say it. I nodded slowly. I will, when the time is right. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a fight. It was simply the truth. I was done swallowing my pain. I was done pretending. Right then, my son walked into the kitchen, smiling like everything was normal. Good morning, he said cheerfully. Instantly, Ima's entire behavior changed. She moved closer to him, touching his arm lightly, acting sweet and supportive. I watched the transformation silently. My son didn't notice anything. He was used to it. He poured himself tea and asked, Amy, you okay now? I smiled gently. I'm okay. For the first time, I actually meant it. Because something had settled inside me. Strength. Quiet, steady strength. The kind that doesn't need to shout or threaten. My son sat down beside me, still unaware of the storm beneath the surface. Ima stayed standing, watching us both, her expression unreadable. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't planning drama, but I was planning boundaries, real ones. The kind that would change everything in this house. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. Really ready. For the next 2 days, the house felt different. I wasn't arguing, I wasn't complaining, but I also wasn't shrinking anymore. I moved the way a person moves when they know their worth. And Ima felt it. I could see it in the way her eyes followed me around the house, curious, confused, maybe even a little irritated, but I didn't confront her. I didn't say anything unnecessary. I just lived like the home belonged to me too. Because it did. On the third day, something happened that pushed everything forward. It was around noon. I was folding laundry in the living room when I heard the front door open and close softly. My son had left for work in the morning and Ima was supposed to be out meeting her friend. She wasn't expected back yet, but there she was walking inside with a shopping bag, moving quickly like she didn't want to be noticed. When she saw me sitting on the couch, her expression changed instantly. "Oh, you're here," she said. Her voice flat. "Yes," I replied calmly. Folding another shirt, she placed the bag on the table with a little more force than needed. "Could you not leave clothes all over the place? Guests come sometimes and it looks messy." I looked around. There was nothing messy, just a small pile of folded clothes and 2 shirts in my hands. She was just trying to regain control because she had felt it slipping. "I'll finish in a bit," I said. My tone was steady, not defensive. She clicked her tongue and sat down at the opposite end of the room, taking out a new designer scarf she had bought. She held it up proudly, waiting for me to comment. I didn't. After a few seconds, she finally asked, "How does it look?" "It suits you," I replied. Simple, honest. She frowned a little. Normally, I avoided these conversations. I stayed quiet. But my calmness today was throwing her off. She folded the scarf and then looked at me directly. "My mom is coming tomorrow," she said. "So try not to bring up anything unnecessary. You know how sensitive she is." I didn't react. I had dealt with this many times before, every visit from her family. She acted like I was the embarrassment of the house. I nodded. "I never start problems, Ima," she scoffed lightly. "Right." I didn't respond to that. After a moment, she leaned back. "Actually, it would be better if you stayed in your room when she's here." "She doesn't like," I interrupted gently. "I will not stay in my room. This is my home as well." That one sentence hit her harder than anything else. She blinked, surprised. "What did you say?" "I said I won't hide in my room," I repeated. "I have the same right to sit in my living room as anyone else." The silence that followed was deep. She wasn't used to me speaking like that, calm but firm. She had learned to control me through guilt, through attitude, through small insults. Today, none of it worked. She crossed her arms. "You're changing your tone now?" "No," I said. "I'm just using the tone I should have used long ago." Her mouth tightened. "My mother doesn't like unnecessary drama, and neither do I," I replied. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. She looked away, tapping her fingers on the armrest, clearly unsettled. Then her phone rang. Her expression lit up immediately. "Mom, yes, I got the scarf." "Wait, let me show you." She stood up, walking toward the window where the light was better, holding her phone up as if she were in a showroom. Yes, he'll take us to dinner tomorrow," she said sweetly. "Don't worry, I'll manage everything." The moment she said the word manage, she glanced at me just for a second, like she was reminding herself that she still had some control. But she didn't, not anymore. When she ended the call, she sighed dramatically. "She wants everything perfect. Please don't do anything to embarrass me." That was enough. I placed the folded shirt aside and looked her directly in the eyes. "Ima, I haven't embarrassed you. But you have embarrassed me many times." I stayed silent because I didn't want to disturb my son's peace. "But silence doesn't mean weakness." She stiffened. "I am not your enemy," I continued. "But I am also not your target. From now on, we will respect each other. Both ways." She stared at me as if I had spoken a language she didn't understand. "You're being very dramatic," she muttered. "No," I said softly. "I'm being clear." Something shifted in her face, a flicker of uncertainty, maybe even fear. Quickly hidden, she picked up her bag and walked toward her room without another word. Her steps were faster than usual, almost as if she was running away from the conversation. I sat back slowly, exhaling. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing like before. I felt strong for the first time since she entered our family. I felt like I wasn't losing myself, and I knew this was only the beginning. Tomorrow, her mother would come, and I had no intention of hiding. The next morning felt heavier than usual. Not because I was scared, but because I could feel something shifting in the air. Change always feels like that, quiet, slow, but undeniable. Ima was already awake when I stepped into the kitchen. She had cooked a full breakfast, which was unusual for her. Normally, she only made what she wanted when she wanted. But today, she was playing the perfect daughter for her mother's rival. She didn't say good morning. She didn't even look at me. She just moved around the kitchen with tight shoulders and stiff hands, the energy around her sharp enough to cut glass. I walked toward the kettle to make my tea. And that's when she finally spoke. "Don't use the fancy cups today," she said quickly. almost as if she had been rehearsing the line. Mom likes matching sets. I've arranged everything. I didn't argue. I didn't say anything hurtful. I simply took out my regular mug and continued making tea. But even my silence irritated her. You're very quiet today, she said. Her voice edged. I'm peaceful, I replied. She froze for a second, just a second, but it was enough for me to see how much the new version of me bothered her daughter. Around noon, her mother arrived, the doorbell rang, and Ima practically flew across the living room. Her tone changed instantly, soft, sweet, overly polite. Mom, come in, come in. Her mother, a well-dressed woman in her late 50s, walked in like a guest entering a hotel lobby, not a home. She smiled politely when she saw me standing near the dining table. Oh, hello, she said with a small nod. Hello, I replied warmly. Ima stepped between us slightly, as if trying to control the interaction from the beginning. Mom, this is, I know who she is, her mother said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We've met before. Ima tensed. She didn't want her mother to remember that meeting because last time, her mother had spoken to me kindly, which Ima didn't like. I offered tea first, but Ima cut me off. Mom likes green tea. Let me make it. I didn't argue. I didn't even step into her way. I simply sat down on the sofa. Her mother joined me. Ima kept glancing at us from the kitchen, nervous, as if expecting me to embarrass her at any moment, but I wasn't here to play games. So how have you been? Her mother asked me kindly. I've been good, I said with a gentle smile. Learning to live more confidently, I guess. Her mother raised an eyebrow. Confidently? Ima quickly returned with the tea before I could continue. Mom, try this. I used the blend you like. Her mother took a sip and hummed in approval. But then she turned back to me. What did you mean by confidently? I smiled, calm and unshaken, just speaking up for myself when needed. Ima's jaw tightened. Mom doesn't need to hear. Her mother held up a hand. Let her speak. The room fell into a small silence. I didn't get emotional. I didn't complain. I didn't expose Ima. I simply spoke like a human being sharing her truth. For many years, I kept quiet, I said softly. Not because I was weak, just because I didn't want conflict. But I realized silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it becomes permission for others to treat you badly. Her mother listened carefully. Ima looked like she wanted to disappear. I'm not fighting, I continued gently. I'm just not hiding anymore. Ima's mother nodded slowly, almost thoughtfully. That is good. A woman should not shrink in her own home. Ima's eyes widened, shocked at her mother's response. But Mom, she tried to protest. Her mother turned to her with a surprisingly stern expression. Ima, have you been troubling her? Ima's face went pale. No. Why would you think that? Because you always look guilty when someone mentions respect, her mother said sharply. I almost felt bad for her in that moment. Almost. Ima lowered her gaze. I'm not guilty, her mother sighed. I raised you better than to mistreat your husband's mother. Marriage is not just about winning. Ima said nothing. Her silence was louder than any confession. Then her mother looked at me again. You are right. She said, don't hide. Don't reduce yourself. You belong here. Her voice wasn't overly emotional. It was simple, firm, matter of fact, exactly the kind of validation I had never asked for but deeply appreciated. Ima excused herself and went to the kitchen, probably to compose herself. Her mother leaned closer to me. Be patient with her, she said quietly. But don't let her walk over you. I nodded. I won't. For the rest of the afternoon, the atmosphere had a strange heaviness. Ima stayed unusually quiet. She wasn't rude. She wasn't defensive. She was uncertain. And that uncertainty made her softer for the first time in years. She washed dishes without slamming anything. She spoke to me without rolling her eyes. She sat on the sofa without treating me like I was intruding. It wasn't a complete transformation. People don't change overnight. But something in her had definitely shifted. By evening, her mother left. Ima walked her to the door, speaking softly. When she returned, she didn't look arrogant anymore. She looked human. She stood near the dining table for a moment, hesitated, then finally said something I never expected. I didn't know you felt disrespected. The sentence wasn't perfect. It wasn't an apology. But it was the first crack in her wall. I met her eyes, steady and calm. I know you didn't, but now you do. She nodded slowly, almost reluctantly. I'll try, and for the first time since she married my son, her voice sounded sincere. I didn't need her to change everything today. I didn't need perfection. I just needed effort, and that. She finally gave. It wasn't the end of our story, but it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I was no longer invisible, one where my silence no longer protected her disrespect, one where I stood not as a burden in my own house, but as a woman reclaiming her place. One quiet step at a time. Asterisk if this story touched your heart, hit the like button and share it with someone who loves stories. Comment below, what would you do if you were in Linda's place? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss story.